Hello, hope everyone is well and feeling healthy and happy and working remotely from their homes. I'm sure everyone's aware at this point that our government has us working from home until the end of April, which is, super precautious, and we're all abiding. Again, we greatly appreciate all those in the medical field, all their time and dedication, the first responders, the restaurants preparing takeout, the grocery stores, the delivery companies. We so appreciate all that you're doing and keeping us on the path to normalcy during these uncertain times. The Senate got together and created the CARES Act, which is super helpful in this time of uncertainty. So to bring some certainty to the table, we've invited some very prestigious attorneys from the law firm of Cooper Levinson to speak to us today. We have Nick Telvacchio, Jennifer Barr, and Jared Stiles to speak to us regarding the programs that are available to give us all a little assistance and keep us calm and secure that our country is here working for us in this challenging economic time. Nick, thank you for joining us. Jennifer, we're thrilled to have you. And Jared, we certainly appreciate your expertise today.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to just kind of generally talk about some of the things that have happened. I know there's a lot of economic insecurity about our health and our family's health. But I want you to know that from my perspective, the government has taken significant actions to help make sure the economy does not completely collapse, that there's a way to a recovery, and also to provide economic security. For example, Social Security has been increased by the federal government by $600 per week for 4 months. That's on top of the normal state stipend. Two, the state of New Jersey has had most banks agree to a mortgage moratorium or forbearance to give people some breathing room. And then finally, the federal government is providing up to certain income limits, $1,200 per adult and $500 per child as a one-time payment to get cash into the economy. In addition to those issues or programs, we're going to talk today about some of the things the state of New Jersey has undertaken through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Jen Barr of our firm will talk about some of those programs. There's a grant program and several favorable loan programs to support small business. Now, on the CARES Act that Mary Lou mentioned, that's the $2 trillion stimulus plan that Congress adopted just last Friday. There is a significant paycheck protection plan. Jared Stiles from my firm will talk about that. The significance of that program is that it provides a loan to employers to pay payroll and some other expenses for a 2-month period. If the employer does spend that money for at least 8 weeks on payroll to keep people employed, that loan can be forgiven in full. So with that introduction, I'd like to have Jen Barr take over. Thank you. Jen?
Thank you, Nick, and everyone who is here. I'm going to blaze through these programs. The takeaway is there is money out there to help small businesses, and some of it is grant money. Some of it sounds like it's a loan, but it really is a grant. And some is coming from state funds and some is coming from federal. So I'm just going to talk quickly about 3 state programs through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, the NJEDA. These 3 programs were just recently funded by the governor to help small businesses. So the first one, it is the Small Business Emergency Assistant Grant Program, and grant is the key word there. This is a grant for small businesses who have between 1 and 10 full-time employees. It's only a small amount of money, depending on how many full-time employee or full-time employee equivalents you have. You can get between $1,000 and $5,000. $5,000 is the max, but again, it's a grant. So if you qualify for this, you will get that money soon to cover, the operating costs. So the key with this grant, the $5,000 max grant, in the Small Business Emergency Assistance Grant Program, You have to fill out the application tomorrow. It goes live tomorrow at 9 a.m. And there's a fixed amount of money in this program, so it probably will go quickly. So the quicker you fill that application out, the better. You can go to the NJEDA website and fill out the application for this $5,000 max grant online. So you can easily do it from your home. So that's the first program through the state. The second program through the state is a small business loan. So this is a zero interest loan that you can, again, apply for on your computer through the NJEDA website. And the benefit of this is that, again, like I said, it's zero interest loan, a maximum of $100,000. There's a 10-year loan term, and there's no application fee. So again, zero interest loan through the NJEDA. That will be a good thing to help your small business along. The third state program through the EDA, it's a loan that you would actually have to go to EDA affiliated banks. Two of those banks that are local banks here are Ocean First and Fulton. Those are participants in this program. So again, it would just be a more traditional bank loan, but it's backed by the EDA, so it would be a good loan. So those three programs are through the state. So you can get more information on the NJEDA website, $5,000 max grant through the NJEDA, and the zero interest, $100,000 loan through the EDA. You can fill out those applications online. So those, and again, that $5,000 max grant through the EDA is available on Friday, April 3rd at 9 a.m. And like I said, that money will go quickly. So the sooner you can apply for that, the better.
Right, and that's excellent opportunity, and they'll probably release the monies as soon as possible as well.
Yes.
I would think.
And it will be released directly into your bank account too. So it's all keeping up with the social distancing guidelines. There's no transaction, person-to-person transaction. It's all remote. Now, those are the state programs. I'm going to talk briefly about the disaster relief, which comes through the federal Small Business Administration, the SBA. These disaster relief funds are similar to funds that some small businesses may be familiar with after Hurricane Sandy. However, the CARES Act, the recently enacted federal legislation that we've been hearing so much about, modified the disaster relief funds. So you have to be careful what kind of information you're getting about the disaster relief funds. They're also known as EIDLs, because these applications were live before the CARES Act. So there's certain information you'll get that is at this point old information. The CARES Act has modified the disaster relief, the EIDLs, and it makes it a lot easier to apply for, opens it up to more entities such as independent contractors and sole proprietors, which are 1099 recipients, which makes it much easier and more people can qualify for the disaster relief loans. So again, the SBA EIDLs, which are also known as the disaster relief funds, these are considered loans. However, the CARES Act amended the SBA, this disaster relief loan, to allow for a $10,000 emergency grant. Again, grant money you don't have to pay back. So you can apply for this SBA loan, the disaster relief loan, but right out of the gate, you're going to get $10,000 within 3 days of the application, which makes it very attractive to small businesses who need cash to cover payroll, rent, or mortgage, or other operating expenses.
Jen, not to interrupt, but as I understand it, you have to actually make a separate, right next to it, there's a separate application for the $10,000 advance, correct?
Right.
You have to apply for the disaster loan.
It's my understanding that at the end of the application, you check a box that says, would you like to be considered for this $10,000 emergency grant? So you definitely want to check yes. And this $10,000 grant, you don't have to pay back if you qualify for the loan. You also don't have to pay back that $10,000 if you don't qualify for the loan. So it's definitely worth looking into for small businesses. The terms of the loan, I'll just go over those really quickly. It's the 30-year loan, interest rate is 3.75. There's no application fee. And again, it is something you can do online at home, without having to go to a bank. So that is the SBA EIDL, or the disaster relief loans through the federal government, as modified by the CARES Act. Now, the CARES Act also, and this is where Jared's going to come in, issued a new program, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is something you can apply to in addition to all of these other loans. Actually, the loans that I talked about, the EDA loans through the state, you can apply for the grant and the zero interest loan. You can also apply for the SBA disaster relief loan, as well as the Paycheck Protection. So you can, cover your bases with a lot of the programs that are available.
Jen, thank you. I'd like to have Jarrett now. One point, though, if you get the disaster relief loan and you get a paycheck protection loan, you can't use the disaster relief loan for payroll. Only the paycheck protection loan can be used for that if you want forgiveness. But let's have Jarrett talk about how that program works. Jarrett?
Sure. I'm going to give a quick overview of the Paycheck Protection Act under the CARES Act, which is under Section 1102 and 1106 of the actual act. Again, that grant that Jennifer was referring to will be deducted against the loan forgiveness on anything that you receive under the Paycheck Protection Act. But again, these loans can work in conjunction. One does not disqualify you from the other. So the first question that you have to ask is whether or not you qualify as a small business. To qualify as a small business, you have to have under 500 employees. If you have under 500 employees, you automatically qualify as a small business for the purpose of the Paycheck Protection Act, which is separate and apart from most traditional SBA definitions. The Paycheck Protection Act is funded with $349 billion, which is being used to aid small businesses. We believe these funds are going to be exhausted very quickly. I recommend everyone get all their ducks in a row and have the application in at latest tomorrow, which is when the program goes live.
It's April 3rd, Jared, correct?
That's April 3rd, correct. What's amazing about this specific loan is no collateral or personal guarantee is required to obtain a payment protection loan. The maximum amount that you can receive from a payment protection loan is $10 million. However, it is the lesser of 2.5 times your average payroll over the course of one calendar year, or in the alternative, the previous 12 months, or in certain circumstances, if you are in a seasonal business, there's a special carve out for you that only treats 3 months to determine the average payroll.
Now, Jared, just for clarification, although you look at a year to get the average, the most you can get is 2.5 times 1 month of payroll.
Correct. So in the funding formula, to determine your maximum amount of loan, it's 2.5 times your payroll number. Now, in that, highly compensated employees who have a compensation of above $100,000 are stepped down to cap out at $100,000. What that means is, let's say that an employee has total compensation of $130,000. When you're doing your payroll calculation, they only count for $100,000, even though they have salary and benefits in excess of that. Again, one of the things that needs to be stated is employment taxes and other benefits, such as retirement benefits, wherein there's employer contribution, are all counted towards your payroll number, which is helpful because it's not just your base salary. I recommend you work with your accountant, an attorney, we're your payroll company to make these calculations. Again, we want to be as precise as possible so that we can get the maximum amount allowable. Now, in terms of forgiveness, once the loan is applied for and the loan is originated, origination means that the loan is actually funded and able to be paid out. You have 8 weeks to distribute these funds over applicable payroll. There are some phase outs and step downs based on employee full-time equivalents that you are employing at the time as compared to your traditional average. The traditional average, there are several different methods to calculate it. That's all under the forgiveness. But needless to say, you cannot reduce your employees' base compensation level, such as a rollback, as an austerity measure, and get full forgiveness. Now, when we are talking about forgiveness, we are talking about complete forgiveness. There's no cancellation of debt income. Again, Jennifer made previous mention of this. This is more of a grant than a loan. Eligible items that you can deduct in that 8-week include mortgage interest, lease payments, and utilities on top of your employee compensation. So
Jared, to just for me as a lay person in this area, so the idea is the loan is 2.5 times 1 month payroll, and then once the loan is funded, there's 8 weeks to spend that money. The idea behind the legislation is that it will cover payroll expenses and some other expenses for a 2-month period, that 8-week period, and then if you spend it properly, you'll get the loan completely forgiven.
That is correct, Nick. And it's important to note that there are very few businesses that are going to have a huge differential, but assuming you do have a differential and you have leftover money, you can return it to the SBA immediately without any prepayment or interest if it's done within the first 6 months. And in addition, if you wish to hold that money, according to recent guidance, the interest rate is 0.5% for 2 years, which is outstanding. The statute, however, states it's 4% over a period of 10 years for that repayment. But again, you can return any money that you do not use to the SBA.
And Jared, you'd mentioned at the beginning that if someone gets a disaster loan and gets the $10,000 grant, that if there is loan forgiveness, that $10,000 will be deducted from the loan forgiveness. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will be offset. You cannot double.
So Jen, if you could just fill us in a little bit on how this affects independent contractors today.
The two federal programs, the SBA disaster relief loans with that $10,000 emergency grant, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program, where you can get 2.5 months of your payroll covered as an effective grant, those are open to independent contractors, which makes these programs more expansive than they've ever been through the SBA before, and will be able to help many realtors especially, and other independent contractors.
That's phenomenal. Huge, very advantageous to the real estate business for sure. So it builds some confidence. Just to reiterate, we are available now to apply online starting tomorrow, which is April 3rd. Is there any type of time frame where you are available to sign in and begin the application?
Can I just qualify one thing, Mary Lou? The disaster relief loan can be applied for now on the SBA website. Tomorrow morning at 9 is the grant program from NJEDA, and also tomorrow, although we're not sure what time, is the Paycheck Protection Program starts.
Nick, could I intervene though and say that where you need to apply for these loans, the $5,000 grant from the EDA, which is live tomorrow, as well as those 0 interest EDA loans, you can apply, which should be available within a week. I'm actually just double checking my notes here. The $5,000 grant you apply for online. On the federal end, the IDL, the disaster relief loans through the SBA, you also can apply for those online. The Paycheck Protection, though, you have to go to a bank, to a lender.
So what do we know in terms of how banks are participating on
Hear you.
paycheck protection? You go right to the bank, or is there any component that's online?
It depends on your individual lender. There is not guidance out there yet. There have been talks internally with several of the banks that they're going to set up individual portals for individuals. I would say that you would be safe going to your local location as long as you contact them in advance and make an appointment to file. Several of the banks are still open. At least that's what I've been told. But a lot of it is going to be able to be done online with working with your SBA representative of the bank. And that's why it's important that you find out who you need to send the documentation to so they can process it appropriately as quickly as possible.
Jared, do you know some of the banks in this area that are participating for the paycheck protection?
Yes, TD, PNC, Fulton, BB&T, and Park are all participating.
I spoke with PNC on Monday, and they were getting all the applications in place, and their intent was to do everything online. Jennifer, would you be able to clarify specific information regarding the remote notarization of documents?
Yes, and that is a big issue that has been going on in New Jersey. We do not have remote notarization yet. Just by way of background, last year, actually 2 years ago in 2018, there was legislation that was introduced in the state legislature, but it lingered in committee. It never went anywhere. There was emergency legislation that was proposed and passed in both the State House and the State Senate, but it has not yet been signed by the governor. And that particular bill is not effective for 90 days, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense under the circumstances. There is a second bill that has been introduced, I think in the House. We're waiting Senate approval. It passed through the House, but we're waiting for the Senate approval in the state Senate. And that also has not yet been signed by the governor. So as of now, we do not have the ability to do remote notarization. Hopefully that will change soon, but until it does, we're stuck with where we are right now.
So Mary Lou, I mean, I think Jen and Jared have really kind of outlined these programs. They are complex. There's a lot of nuances. We couldn't fit, obviously, all of that information in this time span, but we're all available to address any questions anybody may have. And we thank you for the opportunity to get this information out, because I think these programs will really help a lot of the anxiety that people in the business community are feeling today.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, definitely, some direction and certainty, which I think everybody will appreciate greatly. So again, we want to thank Cooper Levinson and their expert attorneys that are with us today, Nick Talvacchio, Jennifer Barr, and Jared Stiles. We so appreciate your leading us in a direction of certainty and guidance. And if anyone is interested in learning more from these expert counselors, please reach out to the Cooper Levinson Law Firm. They are absolute experts and can guide us through some uncertainty. And again, we greatly appreciate all your time and energy. And thank you again for sharing all your knowledge.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks. Something else that I feel is really important to recognize, I mean, we've gotten such great information from these team of professionals that are really here to guide us and help us. Again, they're not giving legal advice, but they are helping us with the guidelines. I have been following Stephen Mnuchin, our Secretary of Treasury, and something that everyone should keep in mind is that he's insisted that they will replenish the funds. So there shouldn't be an anxiety or a panic, to move forward to try to obtain this assistance, because again, they're monitoring our country. The government wants to be there for us, and our health and well-being is most important at this time. So keep in mind that economically, they are monitoring the situation, and the funds will be replenished.